Good morning. So I am with SimpleView. As many of you know, we are a technology and software partner for over 900 DMOs globally. So thank you for having us. I'm going to introduce the panel today for I want to become accessible, but where do I start? So Makiko is going to start us off talking a little bit about New York City and company.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jana. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Jana, and thank you for inviting me to be a part of the TravelAbility Summit. And thank you, Jake and his team, for your ongoing support and partnership. I'm very excited to be here with you all. I am Makiko Matsuda-Healy, Managing Director of, Tourism Market Development at NYC Company. I would like you to know I am a middle-aged Asian female with black hair and dark brown eyes. I am wearing a red top and my pronoun is she, her. Now, New York City welcomed over 66 million visitors pre-COVID. Out of the 66 million, 9 million visitors had some form of disability, according to the Mayor's Office of People with Disabilities, MOPD. Accessibility is essential to this ethos of inclusivity and then also to the economic viability of our city. Needless to say, New York City is a big city, and having an existing large urban infrastructure system, some of which is more than a century old, does have some limitations, but still, there is a lot we can do even in this current environment. Destination marketing organizations, DMOs, like us, have a unique ability to reach both potential visitors and our communities, business owners, staff, and other members of the industry. We have an opportunity to engage the community at large with our efforts. So here's how we started. We always had accessibility information on our website and visitor guide, but we really started to make changes from 2015 with the timing of ADA 25th anniversary. We were lucky that one of our colleagues' husband is Peter Slayton, the founder of the Slayton Group, which provides education and training to the hospitality and tourism industry on services to consumers with disabilities. And Peter conducted the first accessible travel seminar for our members. Commissioner Victor Callis of NOPD has been a tremendous help with our accessibility efforts. He has been guiding us through the process with his expertise, and now he is on the board of Metropolitan Transportation Authority, MTA. The MTA is North America's largest transportation network, serving a population of 15.3 million people across New York and Connecticut. So transportation accessibility is critical for accessible tourism, and we are happy to see Commissioner Callis' presence on the MTA board. And NYC Company started our efforts with two main goals to make New York City a more accessible destination. The first is to ensure that the city's travel-related accessibility information is easy to find, accurate, and up-to-date for visitors with disabilities, as well as their travel planners and families and caregivers. The second is to educate our travel-related product and service providers about the needs of visitors with disabilities and how to accommodate these needs. Our accessible NYC landing page on nycco.com, which is the official tourism guide for New York City, is the content vertical to aid in the planning of trips to New York City for visitors that have accessibility concerns. The nycco.com and Accessible NYC landing page have been audited and optimized for browser screen readers and WCAG 2.0 compliance. nycco.com visitors using screen readers are presented with a custom experience prioritizing accessibility resources before other content. And advanced search tools aid in finding members, attractions, and things to do based on user accessibility concerns and needs. On the back end, each member business populates their own accessibility information through the Simple Use system. That's what we use, Jana. And our accessible NYC content is created by dedicated writers who have expertise in accessible travel. Authenticity is key. Speaking of the dedicated accessible content writers, we are lucky to have, again, Peter Slayton of the Slayton Group and Lakshmi Prasad of accessibletravelnyc.com as our consultants. It is extremely important to go through the process of making a destination more accessible by actively engaging the accessibility community. It sounds very basic, but we might not know what kind of impact any small action we carelessly make or do not make would have to the accessibility community. Representation matters. And I am really excited that Lakshmi is now on our board. Regarding the education of our local service providers, we offer a series of educational programs for our members on Accessible NYC. And earlier this month, we held our annual Accessible NYC webinar for our members celebrating ADA 31. As we are building back
paper copies of the information that.
Sorry, mute please. As we are building back from the pandemic, now is the opportunity for us to build back New York City's tourism better, brighter, and kinder than before. That's our goal. Now, our next step, now we created the accessible NYC section. Now, our goal is to make everything we do accessible as much as possible. And besides the dedicated Accessible NYC webinars for members, we have been conducting monthly webinar series for our B2B partners. No matter what the subject of the webinar is, we brief the audience about the accessibility function of the webinar, such as closed captioning, and make ASL available upon advance request. We also strongly encourage our member businesses, member presenters, to include their accessibility information when they present in our webinars about their businesses. And another example, we launched virtual NYC programs during the pandemic, and these online programs offer virtual experiences of New York City, and we introduced an accessibility section for the content and identifying the range of online experiences that people with disabilities can enjoy, and including filters for adaptive activities, audio description, captions, ASL, and neurodiverse programming. And this summer, we launched our new tourism campaign called It's Time for New York City, featuring itineraries throughout the 5 boroughs made by famous New Yorkers such as Mark Samuelson and even NYC and company staff. We made sure to have Lakshmi's fabulous Accessible NYC highlight itinerary to be featured in this section. So you can see that on our website. And inspiring visitors and New Yorkers by featuring individuals in the accessibility community who are making a difference in the tourism industry is another way for a DMO like us to support the community. In the ADA 31 webinar that I mentioned earlier, we invited Yannick Benjamin, one of the partners who opened Contento, as one of the speakers. You might have heard of him from New York Times and Wall Street Journal articles. Contento is a new wheelchair-friendly, fully accessible restaurant in East Harlem with Peruvian-inspired food and a great wine list. Yannick is a sommelier, and he was in a car accident about 18 years ago, and that left him paralyzed below the waist. And you can watch the recorded webinar on nycco.com. I'll send out a link on the chat section. And sharing the story of Yannick, his energy and resilience can generate incredible inspiration for everyone and support his business at the same time. So these efforts give us an opportunity to send our message of all are truly welcome in New York City. So we have a lot more to do. What's next for us? We are working on audio descriptions for our videos, the textful or images, and you will see more representation of accessibility community members in our creative works for our upcoming campaigns. We will continue to produce accessible NYC content, which is quite popular on our social media channels. And we will have more extensive training programs for our staff members. Accessibility should be included in everything we do. And thank you so much for having me today, and have a great conference. One thing, I have a great video I'm not going to share with you today because of the time, but on nycgo.com, you can see the video of Lakshmi's family enjoying the New York City as accessible way. So thank you so much. And back to Jenna.
Thank you very much, Makiko. So just so I think what she did to get started, the first thing she did, I think, and that I think can be, something that's portable, is she convened a meeting about accessibility of all of, from all of her attractions and stakeholders. And I think this is something DMOs can do, because if in fact, statistically, there are 20% of the people have a disability, then that means that 20% of the hotel managers, 20% of the attraction CEOs, 20% of the restaurants, those people either have somebody that are touched by a disability, and they would probably come to something like this. And so I think that's a great first step, and because that essentially unearths the people within the destination who are really interested, and that's what you start with. So New York is probably the most complex destination of any, with, they have 5 boroughs, 8 million people, and yet they're probably one of the most accessible destinations in the country. So congratulations to you, Makiko.
Thank you so much, Jake. Thank you for letting me share the story.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to introduce Patrick Harrison, who's the Chief Marketing Officer for Visit Tampa, who has done that incredibly successfully. And so Patrick, can you just give us an overview of what you're doing?
Sure. Thank you, Jake. Thank you for everybody who's here in person. I hope you enjoyed the event last night. I take no responsibility at all. I was just there to greet you and drink. But our team worked very hard. So let me make sure that they get the credit for that. So yeah, I do have a few slides. If we could cue those up. There we go. I'm just going to run through some stuff very quickly, because to Visit Tampa Bay, we take inclusion very, very seriously, top down, all the way through. Our COO, Jolyn Loki's also here today, but the way we do things really is from the top down, from the CEO to the board, to the advisory board, to our staff, to everything. Everything we do is intentional, consistent, and ongoing. So about 10 years ago, we rebranded. And rather than being a DMO that was there for the benefits of themselves, we realized that's really not what a DMO's role is. So we created a brand for the destination, right? Nobody cares about us. Nobody comes to Tampa to see Visit Tampa Bay. We're not the important part of that. So we wanted to create something that reflected everything that you see in the community. We looked at all of the values and what stood out specifically. And I'm going to talk not just about accessibility. I'm giving you the whole story of how we got to where we are now. What really came up during all of this was diversity and culture. It really came down to inclusion. It came down to being relevant. It came down to being ethical. You got to remember, Tampa was founded really by the cigar business. So you had the Cubans, the Spanish, the Germans, everybody came here. It was a big melting pot. Back in the late 1800s, when everybody else was still segregated, we would have cigar factories where you would have an African-American sat next to a Cuban, sat next to a white guy, all rolling cigars, all earning the same salary. So we're a little different from say, most other places. So we really came up with a positioning statement that really looked into more of what we wanted to do, which was being an attitude, which was being forward, which was being driven, because that's what is important to us. Which then leads on to diversity, accessibility, and inclusion, which I know is a big keyword for everybody. Everybody in the wake of George Floyd in the last couple of years has become something like, oh, we've got to be diverse. Oh, we've got to be inclusive, which is such a knee-jerk and odd way of doing things, but at least, in some cases, at least maybe it's got them on the road. But for us, it's been something we've been doing a long time. So yeah, we've been working with the Black Travel Alliance and the IGLTA, and we have, and you're going to see in a little while, we have an accessible travel ambassador. We have a multicultural committee that we've had for over a decade. These are long-term things where we really work to this, which then goes into our marketing, which is really, again, focus on representation. It's about building an inclusive process. We're fortunate from an inclusion perspective. The mayor of Tampa is a lesbian. So that gets us a great step ahead of a lot, and it immediately shows that we're an inclusive community. We do a lot with our gay and lesbian community here. Looking at some of our ads here, we've got 2 men in this one. Then we have Spanish ads to show that we reach the Hispanic audience. Again, it's in their language. We're talking to the African-American Black community, and then you see an ad there which features our accessibility ambassador, because meetings have people of every background, gender, and need, right? So we need to sell to all of them. I'm going to show you a real quick video. This is our current 30-second spot. So see if you can notice just how inclusive everybody and how well represented everybody is in this, if it works. But again, this is intentional and consistent. This is not something we're trying to do to make us look like we have, Black people in an ad or people in a wheelchair. And that's not why. It's because that represents and reflects what our city is. And that's what represents the people that come here are. So we want to make sure that we bring those messages to all of those different audiences. So yes, so we now have a new ambassador we talked about. I'm going to show you a video this afternoon, back when I'm coming back later on. We're doing specific advertising that talks to the accessible market. We've got website landing pages. We've done travel agent training. This is the front page of our website. There's Jamie again. Because again, it goes back to being impactful, diverse, and inclusive requires a balance of bold initiatives, sweating the details. And actually, what it comes down to at the end is it works, right? And that's what we're here to do, is to bring people here to give. In fact, I tell my family, when my family asks what I do, I say I sell joy, right? I sell happiness. And so that's all of those people, giving them happiness is our reason to be here. So that's my very short presentation.
Thank you very much, Patrick. So can you just did a quick comment about the PR benefits that you've had with accessibility and what you found in that regard?
Well, again, I don't want to sound like this is done for any other reason than it was the right thing to do. So I don't want to say we did it to get positive PR from it, but there was a lot. I mean, a lot of people have reached out, even in our industry. How did you do this? What's the first steps? How did you go about doing this? And I think we can actually, therefore, it shows us as being a leader in the DMO space, especially. And then when people ask, how did you get started in this? I tell you the same thing I told you this morning, by asking questions, because I have no idea what it's like to be African-American. I have no idea what it's like to be gay. I have no idea what it's like to be blind or in a wheelchair. So I can't market to those people without asking them what it is. And I think just from a local advocacy point of view, just asking the question makes us more approachable. And I think it shows to people that we actually care.
A couple of things before I dive into some specific recommendations is that we work with global brands. And I want to assure you that wherever you are on your inclusion journey, you're at a good place. Don't feel like if you are just now even thinking about disability inclusion and you don't know where to go, that's okay. Or if you've been very entrenched with it, like Tampa, and you're welcoming it in a big, bold way, that's wonderful too. We need to celebrate wherever you are on that path and on that journey. And don't be afraid to be able to recognize, as we've heard before, that this isn't just about a commercial or to simply use somebody as a prop to welcome a certain minority group, but rather, I like to say, let's not focus on compliance, right? We hear the word compliance when it comes to website accessibility quite often. I try to really refrain from using the word compliance, because if we think about tourism, right, are our hotels compliant? Are our all of our facilities compliant? Yes, they need to be. I don't want to say that compliance is a bad thing. It's a good thing. But to really differentiate your destination in a big, bold way, you want to move beyond simply being compliant to really having a true, deep commitment for everything that you do. Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay is Tampa Bay every day, 365 days a year. And that's wonderful, because they are committed to being Tampa Bay and not being any other destination, as you should be when it comes to disability inclusion. Yes, get that compliance, but then move beyond that. So how do you move beyond that? We've heard from our speakers about listening, about hearing from, about engaging people with disability. And really, that's where you start in any portion of your strategic planning process, whether it's to elevate your facilities, whether it's to ensure that your airlift and your airports and your transportation are welcoming. You want to make sure that you're hearing from people with disabilities in any capacity, whether it's the MTA, whether it's the convention center, whether it's your communications, to understand how, more specifically from a marketing perspective, you are either doing a positive thing, or maybe you're not doing anything at all, to be able to hear from people with disabilities in a variety of disabilities, that you can understand where you are and where you want to go. And so that's where research comes into play. Every destination has metrics that they're associated with from a marketing perspective. Make sure that you have disability within those metrics so that you can quantify and start to trend up. Maybe you're at level 0 when it comes to your knowledge and understanding of the disability community at your destination, your DMO. But start with some level and level set where you want to move from to where you want to move to. So have a goal in mind. Secondly, understand your assets. Look at all of the photographs that you have, the video that you have, and where it's being marketed on your website, on your social media. Again, when it comes to marketing and advertising, the word disability and accessibility is very oftentimes myopically associated with a website. Yes, everybody needs to have a very inclusive and accessible website, but how do people find out about your website? How does that disabled person who's excited about that next trip really discover Tampa or any other destination? It's this larger halo of communications that you need to ensure is inclusive, welcoming, and accessible for people with disabilities. So have a plan in place for your social media, have a plan in place for your larger paid media and public relations. And once you start to put those puzzle pieces together, you'll see a richer mosaic of how to be able to welcome people with disabilities, again, in a way that moves definitively from that kind of odd compliance consideration. Because I can guarantee nobody in this room who wants to welcome the LGBTQ plus community is checking a box for compliance. Nobody who wants to welcome people of color are looking at some type of odd compliance consideration. And so the same should be true for disability. How can you be committed in a bold way with your marketing to move forward? And again, before, and I definitely would love to answer questions, but I want to circle back to an earlier comment I made about global brands. Don't be afraid of where you are, either from the dollars that you have to be able to dedicate, if you're a very small DMO, CVB, or destination, or you're a large, massive one, right? Like Visit Florida, or even Tampa right here where we are. You can definitely look to building a plan and pathway that incrementally moves forward, because people with disabilities, even if you minimally start to welcome them, that's a positive thing. Don't feel like you have to accomplish every single goal immediately this year. Look to a plan and a path, again, that moves towards commitment. And again, don't be afraid where you are. We have global brands that we collaborate with that are just now starting out. And I think the last thing to say is, you're already all committed. You're here at TravelAbility. This is one of the best places to start, to be able to have those impromptu conversations at this in-person event, to be able to listen to podcasts, to read the newsletter, or virtually to be able to attend, to start to see that you have a community of camaraderie that you can lean to be able to talk with during a conference like this, or to be able to connect with any time in the year to hear from others how they've gotten started and where they are in their marketing and more broadly, other initiatives towards welcoming people with disabilities.
Thank you, Josh.